Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. In the world, I am glad that you have joined us for RM13000 and 8D problem solving. We've decided to do this a little different. This is not going to be so much a webinar. We want to hear from you. And I know I don't think we have a way to turn on the microphones, but we would like you to put in chat and ask questions. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. So what you have on the panel here are some of the writers of the reference manual. So we're here to support you, and we want to make sure this reference manual is everything you need it to be. So I'm Marnie Ham. I'm the chairperson. I'll let each person introduce themselves. So go ahead.
Okay, I'm Pete Tatey from Pratt & Whitney. I'm a fellow in quality engineering.
I'm Adam Rogers. I'm with Honeywell Aerospace and our corrective action
And
process owner.
capital letter J, it's Jun Sakai from IHI, located in Japan, Tokyo.
And I'm Becky Lemon with SAE International.
So thank you as you start using the chat. All right, so here's our first question coming in. How do we get others to understand that corrective action isn't a piece of paper the quality manager fills out? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I can chime in on that. That's a great question. Good one for opening this webinar. And corrective action, is it just a piece of paper? Of course it isn't. Anytime an escape reaches a customer, especially an aerospace engine component escape, there's always that risk, depending on the severity of the impact of that escape, that it could cause a serious issue. So we have to take a very serious attitude against any type of nonconformance that could cause, a potential problem downstream. But how do we get beyond that? This is just a paperwork exercise. I think part of that is understanding the impact of failures and why it's important for us to have standard work in place that gets different functions involved so that we can put specific problems to rest so they don't come back again. If it's just a paperwork exercise, that will not happen. And so there needs to be a larger understanding of the purpose around corrective action and problem solving with 8D. And the one reason why 8D was chosen many years ago by the AESQ, its robustness. It breaks down the needed steps so that we gain that understanding of the criticality of each step, the criticality of defining the problem, of defining the emergency action, defining an interim plan so that a customer can get production going again, understanding permanent corrective action versus preventive action. That goes way beyond any type of just a paper. And so through strong standard work, I think we can get beyond thinking about cars as a paperwork exercise only.
Right, I'll support that, Peter, in saying that, or Pete, that if your process is internally, I think focus on the problem-solving process and that the paperwork is a documentation of that process rather than the primary effort. That's where you really get you're able to focus that. So.
All right, thank you. All right, we have another question here from Raphael. May I suggest that we add RedX to the pool of 8D tools?
There is some red.
So Pete,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I was going to point it to you, Pete, because I know you've got it in the interactive tools a bit.
Yeah, in the interactive tool, which reposted a very nice improvement just yesterday, there are some red X tools covered within it. So if you go to the control panel of the interactive tool, you'll see at the very that says other tools. Click on that and the red X tools will come up. It's not an exhaustive list, but it is some of the more common red X tools from that we've learned from the Shannon. So check that out. It is on the interactive tool.
All right, and then I want to point out someone has chimed in to support what we were saying. And I don't think, Becky, we were able to find a way that you could turn on the microphone for people who are coming on, right?
Right.
Okay. So Raphael, if you want to post anything in the chat window, we are monitoring it, myself and Becky. So I agree with the team that it's not a value add. We don't want paperwork to just be non-value added, right? It is a documentation process so that the customer understands what's going on. I think that's what you're getting at. I'll quote you. If you allow me to answer about the paperwork, I agree with the team and say, if it is not value added, it is worthless. So when we say paperwork, it's related to registering the lesson learned. So thank you. All right. So I had another question here from, let's see. Can we have some examples of how human factors is used in RCCA? So who's got a good example?
So one key example I could share, I lead our part marking system team at Pratt, and human error results a lot from the complexity of the instruction. It drives a lot of mistakes. And I know that this is shared through some of the other OEMs members. When you have a complex instruction and you're required to read through that to ascertain what you need to do, it's an error. So, so when you're trying to cipher through a complex instruction and you get distractions, as we do every day through cell phones or texts, that can also interrupt the train of thought. So human factors is something that's driven heavily through AS 13100 for a very good reason. It impacts us each and every day, every company, and it's one of the big pool of error sources. So it's important that we take the focus on human error into our root cause standard work. And there's like 12 distinct categories of human errors. I would recommend looking at the reference manual for human error. I think that's RM13010, but don't quote me on that. I haven't memorized all the numbers just yet, but it's excellent, and it helps to answer that question directly with case studies.
Okay. We also have a webinar coming up on that in a couple months, I think it is. Or Pete, is that next month?
Yeah, next month. What makes a
So
good
do watch for that.
AD? You know, and another example just came to mind. You know, when someone, I'll pick on the part marking issue again, serialization, you know, transposition of digits, accidentally when they manually type a serial number into a part marking software, if it's done manually, that's going to drive the chance of human error. We all know that we mistype all the time. We fat finger things. Again, those are other examples of human error that occurs on a day-to-day basis. How we overcome that through automation, templates, it can be challenging, but that's what makes our jobs very interesting.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we got good questions coming in. Thank you, people. Keep at them. So how would you approach changing the mindset of a department that works on non-conformance mitigation for product throughput moving to a CAPA process?
Well, I'll throw something out there. What's the alternative? It's in the best interest of any company to have a solid, strong root cause corrective action process. Who wants to deal with recurring problems? Who wants to deal with customers, you know, calling up saying there's something wrong with the product you shipped me, or suppliers that, you know, provide you escapes? So we're all in this, and we need to have as one of the foundational, and that's why problem solving through AD was the first common process endorsed by the AESQ, because it affects all of us. And there's really no alternative. You gotta, unless you can stop making nonconformances, and that's where PFMEA and process control methods start coming into play. But that's not going to happen overnight. Let's be real. We're going to always have problems when we push the state of the art in technology and process technology and designs. So we got to have a strong way of solving problems. That's why training is so important. You've got to have solid training and teach people in the various roles what their purpose is and how you pull the right skill sets together when you go about solving a problem. It's not just on the quality manager filling out a piece of paper. So that's why the standard work has to be very, very robust and define those roles within the escape management process within each of our companies.
Yeah, maybe I didn't understand the question there, but I think, and Pete, now that you've clarified that, I think it helps to get people out of the mindset. It's exactly what you said, fixing the problem, and I'll say from a rapid problem solving type activity where you're putting the product back to standard, and that's all you ever do. You don't ever address what's making the problem to begin with, and you're going to be stuck in firefighting mode forever. You know, but like you said, if you can get the department to understand, or the leadership to understand, spend the extra time, use the tools, put in effective corrective actions that are going to prevent those in the future, and then by using preventive actions to spread those across other departments, the efficiency you gain out of the team's time will outweigh the cost in putting the time in. So maybe you can approach it from that perspective as well. You know, it's really, you get more, I'll say, return on investment through CAPA than you do just returning it to standard.
Yeah, you are so right. And, you know, just to build on that, you know, one thing I've learned going through 8D is to understand the distinct differences between an immediate emergency action, an interim temporary action, permanent corrective, and preventive action. These are all very distinct. And when people start understanding that, along with the direct detection and systemic causes, that's when it's really the light bulb starts coming on. People really start understanding the problem solving process better. RM13000 has a wonderful diagram in it. It talks about what type of problem is this? Not every problem needs to have, 50-page package of PowerPoint slides. Some problems are very quick. Find it and fix it. You know, if the light bulb doesn't go on my lamp, I don't need to write a big 8D package to fix that problem and move on. You know, I'm going to change the light bulb. I'm not going to take apart the lamp and look for wiring issues. So, the first step is, what kind of problem are we dealing with? If it's a customer escape, that's one that requires a full 8D. And we're going to talk more about that in the next webinar. But yeah, understanding the different actions and the different causes really helps, I think, to understand what a CAPA system should deliver.
Okay. So it looks like we have a few people with some audio issues. So I'm going to try, as you're talking, to type in some answers into the chat window, just so those who are answering questions realize. We've had some questions on what is Red X. Raphael's done a good job of explaining that. So I'm going to assume that is enough. We did the question on Red X. I've also asked Raphael to maybe give some more ideas. So I will try to keep typing these in as quickly as I can as we go, and also getting the questions out. So how do we get customers to give a robust problem description in the first place? Uh-oh, did I stump you guys? It is a good one.
Yeah, I'm just letting others chime in here. How do we get customers? Boy, that's a really good question, because that can differ depending on the type of customer. You may have a commercial versus military. You can get and look at, the types of detailed information you may get or lack thereof. Part of it is bringing the customers on board as well with what we're trying to do. So if a customer understands the 8D steps, like the Supplier does through RM13000, then they begin to understand what it is we need up front to help have a very effective investigation. So, that's part of the dialogue. So when we meet with a customer and we go over what our process is for driving down escapes, driving down defects, it's important for us to communicate with them what would help us to help them. And that's through communication. Working with, your program quality folks who deal with the customer every day, Maybe you have folks that are on site at a customer. Again, communicating what it is that can help in the very beginning of an investigation, in the D0 phase, that will help lead to a good, solid problem definition into D2. So I'll leave it there.
Okay. Let me see if I can grab another one of the questions here. What are some of the creative and simple solutions you've come across so far?
Creative and simple solutions. In what, I guess, a little bit more around that in terms of tools used or actual solutions, mistake proofing solutions.
So Alex was the one who asked the question, so maybe I'll post it back out to him and say, can you give us a little more what you're after in a specific step, a specific type of problem, and I'll come back to you. So here's another one. Do you believe there are specific problem solving tools or strategies for each level of an organization? So do you think there's specific tools for different levels?
Well, I mean, I think it's more about the problem you're trying to solve than it is the level of the organization. You know, approaching the problem with the toolbox and using the tools that are appropriate for the problem. As Pete said earlier, you know, some are very simple and you don't need to use all the tools, and then some very complex problems you may use a variety of them. So I guess that would be my, I don't know that you can organize them that the floor uses one and say, you know, upper management uses another set of tools. It's really about everyone understanding the complete toolbox and applying them as appropriate.
Yeah, and you know, it all starts off with when we have a need to solve a problem. Do I have hard data or don't I? If I have hard data, I can expedite the problem solving process. I might be able to create a histogram and I see a bias in the process from the targeted value. That's going to point me to how the setup was done, the measurement system. I'm going to already have some leads through those clues. So you're like Columbo, right? You're looking for some clues. But if I don't have hard data, then I have to use ideation. And that's where simple, effective tools, as long as they're used correctly, like flow maps. Flow mapping is awesome. It helps us to define where the generation point is, the escape point. We talk about that in RM13000. Where did the issue originate? The fishbone diagram. 5 whys, which came from Toyota, the 5 why process. That establishes cause and effect, but you better have the right team together so they can ask the right 5 why questions. Those tools can impact 80% of the problems we come up with. There are those times, though, where you need, you know, higher level Six Sigma tools, multivariate analysis. Someone mentioned Red X, using the strategy diagram to figure out what kind of a problem this is. You know, is it within part variation? Is it part to part, batch to batch, machine to machine? So there are different problem solving approaches out there. There is no one way to solve a problem. I would never say only use this set of tools. And so, but there are some very common tools that the good Dr. Deming taught us many years ago, the 7 basic quality tools that can be very helpful for most problems that come up. I'll leave it right there.
All right, so I got clarification from Alex. So I'm going to go back to his original question, then add in the piece he just sent, because I told him I'd come right back to him. So what are some of the creative and simple solutions you've come across on mistake proofing?
So like in mistake proofing, I've seen many times the use of templates to help determine whether or not there was missing data or whether or not something was misspelled. The use of Poka-yoke devices that, assure that when we locate a part in a fixture, we take advantage of the asymmetrical nature of the part, so it could only be located one possible way. I've seen mistake proofing ensuring that the correct CNC program has been loaded into the controller by doing a simple dry run test that validates with the part that the program is the correct one. Because yes, we can load the wrong one in sometimes. I've seen suppliers mistake proof the serialization and part marking by automatically taking the given serial number and electronically getting it into their software, so there's no human possible error of transposition errors happening by manually typing it in. Lot of different and there's no limit in mistake proofing. Mistake proofing is one of my favorite areas because it deals with solutions. There's a lot of good, excellent references out there on Productivity Press for mistake proofing. You might want to take a look at. There's one book, the big red one, called Poka-yoke, with 240 simple solutions to common problems from like 11 different process types. I would highly recommend that.
All right, I missed one of the two references you gave, Pete. I got the Poka-yoke with 240 solutions, which is the red book. What was the other one you mentioned?
There's another on the
I'll just type.
on the Productivity Press, and it's simply called Mistake Proofing.
Sorry, trying my best. I am not the best typist to keep up with the comments. Okay, so let's get a few more of these going. We've got some good ones going here. And I'm trying to find one, and I know I saw it. Okay, let's do this one, and then I'll come back to that one. Could you share some of the things you've done for your 8th D to congratulate the team? I think that's a good one. How do we congratulate the team?
I know a couple of our sites, so internally when they'll have like a Kaizen recognition type program where they'll have the teams that have worked on corrective actions and doing mistake proofing type activities will submit to the site levels, and they'll do some recognition at like town hall meetings or maybe in site-wide communications, newsletters, that type of thing. We've also had some, special recognition in like leadership monthly reviews as well. Where they'll go out and they take a picture with the team and a description of their solution and publicize that. Really recognizing the team that they put in the hard work to solve the problem, and then with the benefit that the company's gotten out of that. So.
Yeah, I would echo the exact same thing there. An all hands meeting, team will get recognized. Every quarter we put up, teams that have solved big problems, and and the support that they received. And, you know, especially when team members are working on weekends or, you know, late hours, it's important to give them that recognition. Um, and there's other forms of recognition as well, uh, that, you know, it could be a simple email blast, you know, it could be a luncheon, as well as an all hands recognition. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's interesting because this is an official part of the 8D process we inherited from Ford, and you know, that we brought in. And some folks questioned, why do we need that step? It's a really important step, especially when people are working all kinds of hours to get that problem resolved so we can get an engine shipped. And so it's a step that needs to always be completed.
Yeah, because it really reinforces that the team concept of solving the problem, but it reinforces that behavior of looking for problems, fixing them effectively. You know, if I get recognized for doing something, chances are I'll do it again. So
I'm going to chime in on this one. I've mostly been trying to just type the answers and stuff. Coffee and donuts. I get more done with coffee and donuts than being called out at a meeting, especially when I'm dealing with operators on the floor
yeah,
or a supplier,
Yeah.
because one, I can't be there to do the congratulations in a big meeting, but I can be there to hand out the donuts and the coffee. That's something I'll send in. One of the suppliers I was working with, just because of the timing and the hours I was there, I wasn't able to do that. I arranged with the quality manager to buy lunch for their team members, right? I put that on them. But stuff like that goes a long way in the congratulations. So I put some of that in there too. All right, I got the next one. And this kind of goes with what just a few minutes ago. I understand that the 8D is a structured method to solve problems. We have over 3,000 suppliers, and a large number are small businesses. They shy away from 8D. What is a smaller, more effective tool they could use?
So I'm looking right now in RM13000, and if you went to figure 5 on page 10, you would see somewhat of an answer to that question. So 8D, yes, there's 9 steps to 8D. That does not mean all 9 steps have to be utilized for every type of problem. And that diagram was inspired by a slide on one of our team members from MTU. And they realized you don't need to use all 8D steps for every type of problem. There might be a 4D type of problem or a 2D type of problem. So again, remember, 8D gets involved with the upfront emergency action, population bounding, interim corrective containment to help the customer get to produce again, get their line up and running while you're working the problem, solving, getting to the root causes. A lot of those upfront steps may not need to happen depending on the type of problem and where it is. If it's an issue that holds up found on the shop floor at a certain workstation, but it never got out, a lot of those upfront steps don't need to be part of the 8D. And so, again, look at that particular figure 5, and there's some examples that go along with it, and see if that helps to answer the question. And you'll also see a wheel within a wheel diagram. That happens to be on page 8. And that's figure 4. And it's an interrelationship diagram. And it starts off with, just do it, find and fix. Then there's plan, do, check, act. Then there's DMAIC from Six Sigma. And then, of course, the 8D process. It shows the interrelationship between the different problem-solving approaches. But also, we need to understand, what started the problem-solving process. Is it a themed improvement project driven by management, or is it reaction to a customer escape? So those are two totally different ways of initiating a problem. And so between figures 4 and 5, see if that helps to answer a little bit more of what your question is. I think you'll find it there. You don't necessarily have to use all 8D steps for every type of problem.
All right, thank you. I'm going to add something in on this too, is also look at the different templates. They are not, we went from one template in the AS13000 document to 3, and part of that was feedback, just like this, that some people found the template intimidating. So there are 3 different forms of the template now. There's a Word document, an Excel document, and a PowerPoint. And it's possible your suppliers may find one of those less intimidating just because of way it's structured. And then I know there was a question on the templates, and I think it was more feedback for the committee, but I'll do that. I'm trying to find the exact wording, but I think there it is. So in the past, the AS13, we had 13,000. We had quite a comprehensive AD template. From what I see in the RM, it does not look official because we don't have the AESQ logo. Why is this, and can it be improved? So I think, Becky, we'll probably ask you how we put the logo on. And if that's the only thing that needs to make it look a little more official, I think we can do that.
We can certainly do that, Marnie. That's an easy fix.
And Jan, if that's not exactly what you mean, it was something else, please just pop it into the chat again, and we'll look for that. But one of our reasons for the 3 different templates was to make them less intimidating. Some people found the Word document, the comprehensive 8D template, too intimidating. So we tried to come up with some simpler forms where some of the answers could just be like little check boxes, color boxes. So hopefully, Neil, I've got your thing that you were asking how they're going to be summarized. I'm trying to catch that up in the chat window. They're not exactly flowing perfectly. All right. So how do we get some support from leadership without feeling like we're tattling on other departments?
Now, you're talking about, I guess, maybe clarification on that, whether you're talking about support for the process in general or on specific corrective actions. I speak to the process in general. I think goes back to what we were mentioning earlier, showing leadership the benefits that come with an effective corrective action program, right? The cost benefit you get from fixing problems right the first time, not having to rework them, and being able to use the efficiency across multiple parts of your organization when you implement corrective actions in one place with preventive actions in another, really shows the business impact. And that can be a selling point, I guess, to leadership, is showing that business impact. To the point, I guess, if the question is a different method of how do I get leadership support on a specific action, if I need support from a thing, that's a good question. I guess it has to be, support has to be driven from the top, right? They have to support the corrective action process. And if they are on board with the corrective action process and they buy into this value, then an escalation to the appropriate level usually garners the correct appropriate results.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. It's really part of the culture, that we're not afraid to report, issues. Sometimes we have bad news, but that's why we pull our heads together in the D2 step to pull the right skills and team together to help mitigate and solve that problem. So, management will have a vested interest in buying into this process because it's their best chance of preventing the recurrence of the problem. And that's done by a team, not by one individual. So I kind of get what this person is asking, about the tattling. And that's something that a management team can resolve through, the policies they create right up front, the values that they communicate, as part of their management system manual. What are the values of the company? Not hiding bad news, but rather let's pragmatically get together and solve our problems. This just gives you the standard work around it. RM13000 just gives you the standard work and the ability to do that and execute on that. You're asking something much further up. It's a very powerful question.
All right, here's one I've come across recently, so I'd love to hear the answer too from my colleagues. Is no fault found an acceptable response?
So, one thing I would start off with that one. I remember seeing that quite a bit back when I was a supplier quality manager at Hamilton Sunstrand, and we would see that no fault found quite a bit. One thing that can indicate is a measurement system issue. How did one measurement system find fault and another did not, or wasn't able to confirm it? So it's a clue. It's a sign that there might be a measurement system variation that needs to be addressed. I could, rattle off a couple of examples where that happened in tests that were not done exactly the same way, and that variation led to the no fault found. But it was a problem that got resolved by commonizing the measurement systems between the supplier and the customer. So it's one step in the problem solving process. The first thing we do when we're notified about a problem is we need to validate that actually is a problem. What measurement system was used to give us the decision that there is a problem? How do we know that measurement system used was adequate? So you gotta vet that out. That's important. When no fault found comes up, that usually is a clue that we need to vet the measurement system variation between the two entities first.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
So hopefully that helps, Neil. I added in a little bit too. It may mean that we're not keeping enough data.
Yeah.
To answer questions later.
Yeah.
I think too, in any of these situations too, not that no fault found is never answered, because sometimes it is. I mean, it's probably just more rare than when it's used. I mean, and to the point that's already been made, you really have to vet those to ensure there's not something else contributing to that. But there may be rare situations where it is, for whatever reason it was returned, it shouldn't have been. It really is a good part, that kind of thing. But it's probably a lot more rare than what we'll experience.
All right. If your statistics show, or statics, I think it's supposed to be statistics. If your statistics data show the process and product are all under specification and under control, Do you still have a problem? What kind of problem solving would you use?
So the statistics show that everything is in spec and under
Yep.
control.
So I'm
But
assuming
you
that's
s-
process control,
yeah.
right? I'm reading into it a little bit, and Raphael, feel free to put in the chat if I'm not interpreting this right. So if the product is within specification limits and it's also in control, but you still have some sort of problem, what kind of tools might you use to help solve that problem?
I'm trying to think about like what if something's in control and it's all in spec, what other kind of problem could you have? I'm trying to think about what that other problem might be. Um, but again, it would be the first thing is to review the requirement that you're supposed to meet. And so if you're meeting the requirement, but maybe you're not meeting the business goals that go along with generating the requirement. Maybe the process is inefficient and it's causing a lot of rework. In order to get to the compliant state, it takes a lot of non-value added work. That is another problem, even while you're still, but then again, by definition, you wouldn't be in control. Or you could be in a controlled rework state. Again, I would need a little more context to that. It's an interesting question. But maybe there's underlying inputs that have to be looked at, and there's countermeasures going on in order to meet the customer requirement and allow you to ship product that meets their expectations. But in order for you to get there, might be going over and beyond what you intended. Then, yeah, you'd have to start. You could Pareto the turnbacks that are causing the inefficiencies in the process. Start with a Pareto to show what the categories of what's driving the rework, what's driving the inefficiency. And then from there, what are the top categories? And then follow that right through with the fishbone analysis on each of the top 3 categories. Drill down with the 5 why. Again, that could easily be accomplished with those basic tools. But again, a little more context would help.
Okay. All right, let's get the next question. What kind of approach would you use for warranty or field issues? Or how would it differ in your method of approaching the 8D if you know you have either warranty issues or field issues? I don't know that we usually do use the words warranted. We talk about shop visits and field failures, definitely. So I think that's what they're. So do you approach your 8D any differently?
Well, I guess
Yeah, go right ahead. Yep.
I was going to say, I mean, not really, at least
No.
in most cases, because you still have to go through the steps and understand the scope of the issue.
Right.
You know, that, and you once you're alerted that there's a failure in the field or the customer returns, that the process is really the same, the steps that you go through.
I would absolutely agree. You're going to start off with some type of analysis as to whether or not you have a systemic problem.
Right.
are you getting a recurring issue on a given part number? Is it spread across similar parts, similar programs? Then that's going to take on a certain mindset. And, when you're looking at a bigger problem like that, than if it's just one particular focused issue on one part number, let's say. Those are much easier to resolve. Again, it's what's the breadth of the problem? You talk about warranty. We've got too much warranty costs. What does that mean? So we'd have to break that down. There's going to be many projects that come out of to answer that question. The problem statement is so important at this point, and that's part of D2, is the problem statement. 5W2H is a tool we use to gather the facts so we can boil a decent problem statement. That's like 80 yards of a football field is the problem statement. Most investigations that aren't successful is because the problem wasn't defined properly up front. There may be a number of projects required to work that problem statement. And that goes back to the red X question, because the red X has a filtering mechanism to help define what projects and project statements would align with one problem statement. And so, again, there's some very good slides in the interactive tool that talk, and tools that talk to that, how you break a problem down. That's one thing Red X does very, very well, the strategy diagram. But again, when you're talking about warranty or field failures or, causes of scrap dollars too high, that's a management type of problem because a metric is being adversely impacted. How do we break that down? That's a much bigger issue. That will get down into a number of 8Ds.
Okay. All right. So Jan's reminded me that I had not got to their question yet. So, or it's an add-on to the previous one. How about tracking of identical actions? So you have multiple actions and some of them are the same. Is that clear enough, or do I need more clarification from Jan?
Well, can you state that again, Marnie?
So it's about the corrective actions. So they've identified, how do you go about tracking the not identical, my misread, identified actions. How do we about go tracking through the corrective actions to ensure they're complete?
Oh, okay.
So anyone got a best practice on tracking those?
Well, so internally we have corrective action tracking software that we use that tracks, assigns actions, communicates action owners via emails and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
To keep them on task and remind them that they're coming due and that sort of thing. From an automation perspective, that's one way of doing it. If you're in a smaller operation, even a simple rail list, a rolling action item list that you can keep up with regular reviews on a regular basis. It may be in tier meetings in the morning. Again, the scope of the problem, right, is how you can do this. So you don't have to use necessarily fancy software tools. You can use simple rail lists with regular review meetings to keep it on task.
One thing I'll add to the question was, to me, that seems very important. It just triggered a thought, is one of the things that we review 8Ds every quarter. We go through all the escapes we've had, And then, we meet we pull a team together from manufacturing and quality engineering, design, and we go over these packages. And one thing we look for is how well those actions align with the root causes identified. And one thing that helps is when you have an 8D package ready to be presented to management or a customer, it's not a bad idea to have somebody with a level of expertise or even a team review it first. And then they can weigh in. They might find some opportunities for improvement or some gaps. They can vet it out. And that's a very good process to have in place. Doesn't matter how big the company is, it's good to review a package with another set of eyes before it goes to a customer. We call that a pre-board process. I know that did not address directly that question, but it reminded me of that, and I wanted to at least share that as a best practice.
So I guess the question I'd ask, and this is Jan or anyone else to respond, would us creating a template like the rolling act, the one that Adam talked about, the rail, the rolling action items list, would that be helpful if we put a template up of that? I know I use one in running our meetings as this committee. I have one that I send out to my committee, to this group that you're talking to right now, to do just that, because we obviously cross companies don't have a software that can manage that. So it's just an Excel spreadsheet that I'm using that shows when we predict or when we have set our date to be completed, and then when we actually complete it. We could provide that if that's something that's useful. Because when you're tracking multiple suppliers, it's not easy to do. Okay, Dan, correct me. Yes, identified, not identical. Sorry about that. Yes. How about tracking? Okay, just confirming that yes, they like what we talked about. Okay, let me see what else we got here. Thank you for the questions. This is great that everyone's participating in the questions. All right, we have a question from Sarah. So please provide some examples or techniques for D4 for verifying the root cause for process-based defects that are statistically rare occurrence or expensive to reproduce. So there's a new one.
I mean, that could involve defining a test that could help replicate that condition. You want to establish cause and effect so that you've gotten down to the root causes. I think so. Was the question more about? I heard the word rare type of issue that may come up.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to tag that on the screen so people could see it. So please provide some examples or techniques for D4, i.e. verifying the root cause for the process, but based on one that have statistically rare occurrences or are expensive to reproduce. So this is a situation we don't want to make the defect to prove it because it's going to cost us too much or the suppliers too much.
Yeah, I know, like from a background in electronics years ago, there would be these electronic engine control failures that may happen due to could be an electronic component that has a 99.99 something percent yield rate. You can get one out of, literally 3 out of a million that could get through and cause a test failure. And those are very, very hard to get your hands wrapped around. And, you know, through accelerated life testing, highly accelerated life testing, HALT, you might weed those weak parts out. So there might be some type of test that one can do that could bring up to the surface some of those very rare instances that you might be talking about. Again, you'd have to look also at the impact of the failure mode of that rare event. If it's something that's very minor and it would cost an exorbitant amount to surface it, you might live with that problem. That might be the business decision. It could happen. But if it could impact failure that's severe or critical, then we would decide to go with the expensive additional testing. That could take 40 hours. And so, again, a lot of it comes down to the impact of the failure mode that drives a lot of the decisions in these instances.
Sorry, trying to summarize that. All right, for those who don't have audio, Becky did put information in here, but I am trying to still keep up with typing in some of the answers here. All right, so what should you do if the result of 8D work is we have to live with the problem due to high investment costs? So this is really following on what you just talked about. So two people had similar things. Is it acceptable? Should we do cost analysis while comparing, i.e. scrap versus investment? So is it pretty much the same thing, Pete, right? It's based on the impact?
Yeah, and
or would you
of
define it someplace else?
It would be based on the impact, and of course, you know, resolving that with the customer. You know, things like this might lead to a design change, but it's important to know that there is this additional hardship to try to root out this very rare type of situation. Sometimes we could decide it's more economical to live with a situation until we can come up with a better way. There might be a containment plan put in place in the interim.
Yeah, I'll add to that, and I say I think you're absolutely right as far as the cost benefit analysis, which you have to do. But you need to, if you're doing your cost analysis, you'll need to make sure you include all the different pieces that Pete was mentioning earlier. So if you're putting in the containment action, a secondary inspection, extra testing, all of these things that you're doing to protect your customer, you know, what's the cost that you're incurring by doing all of that, and also what's the cost incurred to your customer if they continue to receive the bad product, right? I mean, so scoping all of that into your cost analysis should be done to really offset the investment.
Okay.
So Marnie, we are at the top of the hour here. I don't know how much further you want to go.
Let's see, I'm looking to see where we're at on the questions. Have we covered most of them? I know we had a few survey type questions we were going to ask, but I feel like we've got lots of questions, and maybe while I'm looking through the questions, I will ask that. So what could we improve? What would be the best improvement you could tell us to put into the RM? What would be the most helpful thing? Well, look and see if there's any others questions that I know we haven't answered everything, but let's see if we got anyone that's got similar questions. And then maybe we'll take another 5 minutes if that works for our panel. I know we put this for 1 hour and we're already over the hours. 5 minutes good enough to wrap up?
Sure.
Okay. So we still have a bunch of questions left, and I will keep track of those as we leave. But this one kind of was one that I feel like a few people are feeling, even if they haven't all typed the same one. So the pandemic has caused companies to restructure, and we are now extremely lean on people, and not just our suppliers. We are feeling that too. Okay, the OEMs and the tier 1 suppliers are all feeling that too. So is completing an 8D by a sole person valid? I think that's a really good question. Who wants to take that?
Well, I'll start off. I'll just say that
Perfect.
I understand the constraints, but without a team, you're going to lose a lot of perspective. When you have a diverse team that is bringing those different strengths and perspectives into the situation, that really enables you to have a more robust response to the process, or robust answering of the findings. Sorry, going through your cause analysis and then developing corrective actions, because it's just having that experience together and the different viewpoints helps it be a better quality response for sure. You can still complete the 8D by a sole person, but it will be evident when you read the response in most cases.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're so right. And, again, it goes back to the type of problem you have. If the flashlight doesn't go on, you don't need a team to fix that, right? You can change the battery and more than likely you're going to fix the problem. But if it's a material issue, a crack in a housing, buried, uncovered through machining, like a linear indication of some sort. I mean, you may need someone who's got a NDT background or a special process background for a heat treat issue or a carburizing issue. You might need some special skills depending on the type of problem. So one person, unless they have all that knowledge, is probably going to miss some things. There's a good chance of that. So I would caution against that. Again, it goes back to the type of problem you have. That should dictate what number of team members you need.
Okay. So I know we didn't get to everyone's question. I don't know if we have a way, Becky, to answer them, if we just do that through like the LinkedIn community, or if there's a way through the website to like post the question and our answers.
So we can
figure that out.
Yeah, Marnie, we can do both. We can post them on the LinkedIn community, but we've gathered all of the questions that have been discussed during this session, any that have not been answered. We'll compile those and link them on the website along with the video recording of this session.
Awesome. And we want to thank everyone for coming. We do appreciate it. We want to make sure we are providing you the best reference manuals we can. And I see some people have commented that the document is great, well prepared. We'll take care of getting logos on our templates for the 8Ds. That's one we can easily do to make it look more professional and to get it incorporated more so people are less likely to try and adapt it. Again, thank you very much. If you haven't joined us on LinkedIn, we do have an RM13000 group on LinkedIn, and we're all members there, so we do answer questions on there too. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to everyone who is speaking, especially Adam and Pete, because you took the bulk of those questions. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you for being here.
It was a pleasure. Have a great day.
All right, have a good day.